Chapter 18. Anger and fear carried me back up the same flights of stairs I'd traversed twice already in the last half hour. Rage turned my key in the apartment's lock and powered me through the darkened room on fox-soft feet. But once I tiptoed up to Kira's bed and found the girl snoring on her pillow, the events of the night all caught up with me at once. An intriguing and far too astute alpha, a well-named Jackal nipping at the heels of those stronger than himself, a serial killer on the loose who appeared to possess my mother's missing possessions, and Kira caught in the middle, with only me to defend her from the horrors of the outside world. At least I still had my sword, and whatever information I could glean by tapping into my neighbor's unprotected wireless connection. To that end, I booted up the laptop so ancient it had been discarded as useless by Kira's school a semester earlier. The power cord was frayed and only worked if bent at just the right angle. I folded the appropriate loop into place and tacked it down against the kitchen table with the weight of the computer itself. Similarly, the right-hand hinge was broken from being manhandled by one too many students, so I had to use two hands when opening the screen, so as not to damage the machine beyond repair. Finally, though, I had a browser in front of me, the colors blinding against the darkness of the otherwise unlit room. Tapping F9 with a fox's instinct for stealth, I continued dimming the screen until I was able to see again using my peripheral vision. Only then did I begin to type. Luckily for me, Kira had saved passwords on the same device I was currently accessing, so it was the work of only a few minutes to discover that Mama's possessions had been sold off in 3 batches to 3 separate buyers. The closest purchaser was in Michigan, the furthest in California, and the amulet had been included in the latter lot. It seemed hard to believe that someone had traveled halfway across the country to return items I'd considered junk to their original location, then had used the selfsame amulet to commit murder in a manner seemingly designed to implicate werewolves after the fact. Still, the listing was one of the few leads I'd come up with to date, so I noted down each address and eBay handle to be analyzed once my brain was less desperately in need of sleep. By that point, my eyelids were starting to slide closed, and I knew I'd hate myself in the morning for failing to go to bed in a timely manner. Still, there were so many questions circling through my mind that I doubted my ability to sleep, even if I succumbed to my current state of exhaustion. Specifically, I wanted to know more about fox shifters, to answer the questions Kira had recently been asking. Mama had sworn me to secrecy as soon as I was old enough to say my own name, and I'd somehow carried that promise through to adulthood. But what could it hurt to Google the concept and find out what the wider world knew about my kind? What would it hurt to educate myself about my abilities, as well as the risks that threatened my sister and me? So I pulled the screen closer toward me, placed my hands on the keyboard, then swore under my breath as the formerly lit surface went abruptly blank. I know better than that, I berated myself, while fiddling with a funky hinge full of rather important cables. Had I pulled out an internal wire while trying to make the words on the screen a little easier to read? Or did the cranky laptop just need a little TLC to bring it back to life? Only after several minutes of frustration did I realize that it wasn't the hinge that had caused the problem in the first place. Instead, my touch to the upper corner of the laptop had caused the power cord to unravel, and of course, the battery no longer held a charge. 444 read the glowing numbers in the upper right-hand corner of the rejuvenated screen when the operating system finally booted back up. I waited for my mother to toss out a proverb about bad luck. After all, I remembered her warning me repeatedly as a child about the ill-fated nature of the number 4. But her ghost voice remained silent, so I pushed the memory aside, typing in my query with 2 fingers and a thumb. "What are fox shifters?" I whispered aloud, as words slowly materialized on the screen before me. And Google answered immediately, a single word popping up in a box above all other search results. Kitsune. The foreign word sent a jolt through the starball-turned sword still scabbarded at my back. But when I nudged at my mother's ghost, she remained resolutely silent. Well, if Mama wasn't going to explain my genealogy, then I'd have to do research on my own, because familial secrets had already killed 2 innocent humans. For all I knew, Kira and I were next. So I clicked through to the first website, and slowly, I began to read. Sometime before dawn, I collapsed onto the softest bed in our apartment, the one that already contained my comatose sister. "Get off me," Kira complained, words running together muzzily. Then she growled sleepily as my cold fingers snuck up against her warm scalp to thaw. "So shift," I answered, only a little less groggily. There had been so many stories on the internet, myth and supposed fact and tales labeled modern fiction. Kitsune were Japanese fox shifters. That part I could vouch for myself. But were we tricksters who only appeared human in moonlight? Or beautiful and loyal women whose reflections showcased the fox within? So many stories, and none of them seemed to reference an amulet able to suck a human's life force out of his body, then leave said two-legger with a miniature starball frozen into his chest. So I took the easy way out and decided to deal with my heritage tomorrow. Instead of mulling over the issue further, I snuggled closer to my sister, waiting for her to pull upon her fur form and make a little extra space for me on the bed. After all, the bar in the sofa bed was brutal. I ended up here more often than not, and Kira was always willing to shift and snuggle. Only apparently she was feeling argumentative tonight. "You shift," my sister countered, sounding more awake than previously as she elbowed me in the kidneys. Her bones were sharp, and her tone was surprisingly adamant. So this time I shrugged and obeyed. One moment I was a woman, frozen and exhausted, mind running in endless circles that all centered around the child hugged within my arms. The next I was a fox, moist nose the only part of me exposed to the chilly air in our barely heated apartment. Tucking my snout beneath my tail solved that problem, and soon I was as toasty as if Kira had let me under the covers in the first place. This was the life. With that thought, I drifted off and slept the sleep of an innocent animal. The bed was soft, my sister was close, and vague threats could be dealt with at a later date. Too bad later came far too prematurely when the kitchen door crashed open and werewolves poured into our previously solitary den.